Hey guys, Matt here. This is my review of Thor: Love and Thunder. This movie is directed by Taika Waititi, who previously directed Thor: Ragnarok and Jojo Rabbit. This movie stars Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman, with Tessa Thompson and Christian Bale. The events of this film pick up shortly after Avengers Endgame, where Thor has now aligned himself with the Guardians of the Galaxy, trying to fill this hole, this void inside himself. So he goes on all these battles and adventures with them. Meanwhile, a new villain has emerged named Gore the God Butcher, who seeks to slay all the gods that he feels wronged him. Also, Thor must also deal with the fact that there's a new person running around calling themselves the Mighty Thor. A villain capable of destroying planets and a second Thor? What's a guy to do? Now, when they first announced they were making another Thor movie, I was excited because I was happy this was the first OG Avenger to have a fourth solo film, not a group Avengers movie or something leading into another bigger project, but a fourth film, something Captain America and Iron Man couldn't do. So, then I found out that Taika Waititi was going to be in charge, so I was like, okay, great, so we're going to get Thor Ragnarok Part 2, which is fine, because that movie was fun, entertaining, adventurous, it was really good. And then I found out that Christian Bale was going to play this really nasty, sinister villain, and I was like, yeah, we're finally going to get that one Marvel character, that one Marvel villain that was played by this A-list actor. No offense to Robert Redford or Kate Blanchett or Jeff Bridges. We're going to get that main villain so this actor can finally sink their teeth into. Well, having seen the movie, I can honestly say I was surprised, and not in the way you might think. And at least this movie was entertaining. Now let me say right off the bat that depending on what you want out of a Thor movie is going to depend on your enjoyment level in this film. If you want something more like Thor 1 and 2, where Thor is a cunning warrior, it's a serious tone, serious story with down-to-earth realistic aspects, then you'll be disappointed. If you want a continuation of Thor Ragnarok, you want the bright, colorful, silly, slapstick, goofy comedy that is Taika Waititi, then you'll love this film. If you want the continuation or closure of the Thor and Jane love story, then you'll enjoy this part. If you want the Christian Bale, method actor, the serious, sinister, creepy, terrifying villain, then you'll enjoy this film. Let me tell you that this movie is 70% comedy and 30% drama. So the aspects with Jane and Gore the God Butcher, they're nice when they happen, but they're a little too few and far between for my liking. It's as if the higher-ups at Marvel were like, okay, Taika, people love Thor Ragnarok, so here you go, here are the reins, do whatever you want. And he did just that. This movie is like him cranked up to 11. His comedy, his sense of humor, his gimmicks, the way he presents things, bright, colorful, flashy, silly, goofy. It's all here in this movie. The days of serious Thor, where he's a cunning warrior and he's intelligent and everything is serious, that's gone. We have Thor Ragnarok all over again, just more of it, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Thor Ragnarok, my biggest issue with that is that you had this actress, like Kate Blanchett, playing this really sinister, really tough villain in Hela, but the rest of the movie was very light-hearted in nature. One problem I have with Thor Ragnarok was there's a scene where she slaughters all of Thor's best friends, the Warriors 3, like they're nothing. And there's really no falling out of that. There's a scene like that in this movie where one of Thor's allies are injured and he cracks a joke. I had a huge problem with Age of Ultron because of the comedy. There was too much of it. Every serious moment, every dramatic moment, every tense moment that you were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? You were intrigued by, it was undercut by a joke. And this time around, Thor, in Thor Love and Thunder, he's an idiot. There's a lot of moments where he'll go on this monologue talking about things that he knows nothing about, or he'll go on these rants trying to make himself sound tough and brave and courageous. And he really doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's just really sad because that character has fallen quite a bit. Natalie Portman is Jane. She is fine in this movie. Granted, there are things that they do with her character where after the Thor stuff happens, they don't really explain the origins of that. It's just there, so you kind of have to go with it. But the scenes where she gets emotional, the serious aspects of the movie, if you know If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Those parts work. The parts with her and Thor, I really enjoyed those scenes because to me, Thor really hadn't been the same without Jane. In all the movies where he kind of, he laments over her or he's sad because she's not with him, those parts were good. The best part of the movie is Christian Bale by far. Granted, he has the name of Gore the God Butcher, and we don't see him do a lot of God butchering, unfortunately, but his portrayal of this character is very good. Very good. There's really evil, menacing parts of him, but then there's also some emotional sides to him. And I would say this is probably, next to Harsh Times, this is probably one of the few movies that I've seen that I can remember where Christian Bale gets emotional and actually cries. Like, he's really good in this movie. Now, his part, just like Hela in Thor Ragnarok, it's really juicy and you're really excited to see it. And then when he's not on screen, you're like, where is he? Go back to him. Go back to that part. He's really good in this role. He's like Voldemort, where he's like ugly and he's bald and he's very sinister, but also he's just very, very powerful as well. So those are the main parts of the movie. The rest of it, honestly, is just there. Tessa Thompson is Valkyrie. She's now King Valkyrie in charge of New Asgard. She's a side character in this movie. She doesn't have a whole lot to do. She's a badass fighter in certain scenes, but other than that, she's just there because she was there in Thor Ragnarok. Korg is there because he was there in Thor Ragnarok. There's even a running gag where in Thor Ragnarok they had this dramatic theatrical performance from Sam Neill, the other Hemsworth brother, and Matt Damon. They're in this too, and that's funny, but they're there just because they were in Thor Ragnarok. A lot of this movie is like, okay, so we ended Avengers Endgame a certain way, and Thor Ragnarok, so we have to continue that. And that's nice, continuity is good, but here, a lot of it is just there. The Guardians, they're just there. And it kind of makes you wonder, why did all these actors and actresses agree to be in this movie when their roles are so minor? They could have done a lot of things in this movie in, montages and flashbacks. And to me, they just weren't handled the best way they could have been. Now, this movie looks really good. There's a certain scene on this place called the Shadow World where they use mostly black and white and bits of color. That was really, really cool. Also, some of the comedy in this movie works. There's a scene where they go to visit Zeus, played by Russell Crowe, and he's great. He is very funny in his parts. But the screaming goats, the gag that Thor's an idiot, and just all these things where you have characters in a room, and a character says a joke, and then another character chimes in, and then another character chimes in. It's really over the top, because it undoes any of the drama, any of the serious moments that you're trying to establish when you have it surrounded by so much comedy. So because this movie was entertaining, but it was just too much comedy, and you can tell that the Phase 4 movies in the MCU, really, they lack direction. Shang-Chi, The Eternals, Thor 4, all the Disney Plus shows, they're not really building towards anything monumental. There's no big bad on the horizon. There's no trail for them to follow. What's next for Thor? I think I know where it's going, but honestly, I just don't care because I feel like the higher-ups are like, hey, let's just throw stuff, hope it sticks, because people are going to go see it regardless. And so I feel like Thor Love and Thunder, it's entertaining. The music is really cool. They use a lot of Guns N' Roses in the soundtrack, but because it's just a continuation of Thor Ragnarok and really nothing bigger, nothing more meaningful, I'm going to give Thor Love and Thunder a C+. I wanted to go in this really liking it, but then when I realized, it's just a continuation of Thor Ragnarok and there's just way too much comedy for my taste, I just wasn't a huge fan of this movie. I like Thor the character, and I'm excited to see where they go next, but it is what it is. So until next time, guys.